All the painters that I knew when I was young, for all of them Matisse was a god. You know, he just had this astonishing impact on all painters in the second half of the 20th century. But I never thought about him as a man, and when I began to make inquiries, I came to realize what an extraordinary human being he was. Matisse was born in the very northeastern side of France, just inside the border with Belgium. It's where the First World War was fought. In the thick of those terrible upheavals, they were in his blood and in his bones. And of course he grew up not to paint horror and destruction in the way that, say, Picasso did. Matisse wanted, in his work, a world of peace and harmony that he had never known. He sacrificed absolutely everything to his art. When his father said painting was crazy, he had to enroll at art school in secret, he ran away at the age of 21 to Paris to become a painter. And everybody thought he was absolutely mad. He himself said that, you know, it would take 50 years really for people to understand. He was trying to persuade himself that one day other people would understand what he was doing. Of course, it was also very hard on his wife, who for a very long time was the only person in the world who really believed in him and his art. So it was not an easy life for any of them. He made the first Icarus in 1943, what I think would be recognised as the first cut-out proper. France, of course, by now was occupied, and Matisse was a bedridden invalid. And when he cut that Icarus out, it was a time when shells were landing in his garden and Germans had commandeered the lower part of his house. He mounted it on black and it's got what people thought were stars all around it, golden. Actually, Matisse said they were exploding shells at the time. Of course they were. Quite a lot of people who visited Matisse did see him making these things and described it. They were sheets of paper that had been covered with gouache colours. He sat up in bed against his pillows. He'd pick up a piece and cut out the shape. His assistants, who had to paint the paper for him, they had to pin it on the wall because he hadn't the strength to do that any longer. He'd say, no, that won't do. Shave a bit off there, cut a bit off there. And it went on from morning to evening. One of them said, he knew what he was looking for, but we didn't. In his head, he must have had a picture of how it was he wanted it to end up, and it was never like anything anybody else had ever made. The snail was a very late work, I think, and it's not even cut out. A lot of it is actually torn paper. He said what he was trying to do was boil down something, anything, to its essence without losing anything of expressiveness. His whole life had been, one could say, a conflict between colour and line, and now he'd abolished that conflict. Matisse didn't really use words to express this. He expressed these things with paint, but it is a kind of spiritual harmony and liberation and freedom that he achieved at the very end of his life in his great cut paper compositions.